All right, now let's head into the news hour, just checking out what is happening in the world of business, just to keep you up to speed with the details from the business world. Now let's kickstart off with 6 Eritreans rescued in Uganda in the human trafficking scam. Now, according to the 2021 Trafficking in Persons report, Uganda, the government of Uganda does not fully meet the minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking, but is making significant efforts to do so. Now, these efforts included identifying more victims and signing the national referral guidelines for management of victims of trafficking in Uganda. Now, in the same manner, the Office of the Uganda Deputy National Coordinator Prevention of Trafficking is investigating the circumstances under which 6 Eritreans were trafficked into Uganda at Jinja Central Police Station. Speaking to journalist Agnes Igoye, the Deputy National Coordinator Prevention of Trafficking in Persons and Training Manager at the Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration Control, says that they have arrested the suspects. Patterson Mumbere reports.
The person they were taking them to has also been arrested. I haven't got the name yet. So everybody on the chain, those who are transporting, those whom they were supposed to deliver them to, the
enforcement personnel investigated allegations of complicity in trafficking crimes and created human trafficking officer positions within the Ugandan police force. Speaking during a press briefing, Agnes Igoye, the Deputy National Coordinator Prevention of Trafficking in Persons and Training Manager at the Directorate of Citizenship and Migration Control, says they are following up a case where Eritreans have been trafficked into the country at CPS in Jinja.
We are also following up, a case which is now in Jinja, CPS, where they intercepted at the Jinja Bridge Eritreans, being trafficked into the country. And this is a situation whereby a Ugandan driver is given people from the border. A driver from Kenya hands over, these victims to another driver. And then he drives them all the way. And then, of course, they don't pass through immigration. They use the porous borders. And then they're intercepted in Jinja. So this driver is called Omoya Tolbert Williams. And like we've always said, trafficking is not just the person who ends up exploiting.
The findings further indicates that the pandemic and the government's closure measures, including closure of internats, district and closure of schools, workplaces and government offices, shifted trafficking trends, where Igoye advised drivers to be mindful of the people they are carrying, otherwise they won't be spared. She said that the victims were rescued in eastern Ugandan district of Jinja.
We have online services for visas, and we call upon everybody who wants to come to Uganda to use the online applications. Because some people think we still have visa on arrival, we do not have visa on arrival, and it's incumbent upon anybody attempting to come to Uganda to go online and apply for visa online. Our website is now robust, and we have now put all services together to have a dynamic portal that is able to serve everybody anywhere in the world. And that portal was launched on Friday. So instead of looking for independent websites for specific services, you can now go to www.immigration.go.ug and get all the services that you want, whether it's a passport, whether it's a appeal, whether it's an application for any facility. You can just go to that site, that portal, and get the services. So anybody wishing to travel should ensure that you have documents that enable you to travel at the moment. There are people who were refused entry. 2 Somalis were attempting to enter South Sudan, and they were returned. And then there are 2 Ugandans who were attempting to go to Cairo. They were refused entry and returned to Uganda.
The Uganda Association of External Recruitment Agencies has always called on government to prioritize reopening of their training centers, saying that the closure of these orientation centers is fueling outbound human trafficking in the country. Pedson Mumbere, Smart 24.
All right, now the Ugandan Association of External Recruitment Agencies, the UERA, has always called on government to prioritize the reopening and of their training centers, saying that the closure of these orientation centers is fueling outbound human trafficking in the country. We are also in a situation where we are still looking at a way how we can prevent human trafficking, the increasing rate of human trafficking in Uganda. Now, one may want to understand what is human trafficking. Most probably, some of the prevailing cases of human trafficking include scenarios where a recruitment agency advertises a job available on the market, but in a secret manner, whereby the government doesn't even know of this particular job. Remember, for them to actually operate, they need a license from the government, and it is quite evident that once someone who has no license from the government is not fit to actually continue with work in terms of recruitment agencies. These are people who have actually signed deals with companies abroad to actually send out Ugandans who actually go out there to do different jobs that actually quite the opposite of what they were actually promised. Now, if you look at situation where there were also cases during the lockdown where one Miss Dorothy was actually also facing allegations of taking out Ugandans or trafficking out Ugandans to the UK, where, according to reports, these Ugandans would go out there to sleep with dogs and do all those malicious activities with the dogs, something that is quite inhuman. So you could see those are some of the cases of human trafficking. Some Ugandans are also transported out of the country, promised various jobs, but then they become drug transporters, or they start becoming I wouldn't say they become drug dealers. Yes, they become drug dealers, selling out drugs, transporting these drugs. You've heard of all these reports where people actually transport drugs in their bodies. So someone is actually where you get people arrested on the international airports. We even had some cases where in China, some Ugandans have always been sentenced to life imprisonment, because remember, in China, it is actually a very huge crime once you're caught dealing with drugs. So you could see these are some of the cases of human trafficking that are prevailing in Uganda, something that the government is trying so much to fight as well. Now, the findings further indicate that the pandemic and the government's lockdown measures, including closure of international airports and land borders, districts and closure of all schools, workplaces and government offices, and shifted trafficking trends. Thereby, Ngoya advised drivers to be mindful of the people they are carrying, otherwise they won't be spared. Because preferably for a driver who's actually driving cargo, you see these particular cargo drivers who access the borders with those who drive huge trucks. These are the same people who are actually being cautioned here to make sure that they know the people they are carrying, because sometimes you may be thinking you're carrying goods or stuff, you're actually carrying goods, yet you're only carrying human beings that you're actually trafficking out of the country to travel to Kenya, which actually is quite illegal. Now, she said the victims were rescued in the east. If you look at some of the victims who were rescued in eastern Uganda district of Jinja while en route to the capital, Kampala, from neighboring Kenya. So these are some of the people who actually trafficked. This is some illegal transportation of human beings. It's just like someone smuggling of goods into a country. This is the same thing of actually smuggling a human being into a certain country. And you could definitely see some of the cases even in the United States when the ex-American president, that is Donald Trump, actually had a very huge fight with the Mexicans, where he actually said he was going to build a Mexican wall, where because according to reports, if you could see the refugees who could actually come to the United States from Mexico, there are quite many. So it is the same situation here. You could definitely see some of the victims who are rescued here were coming in from Kenya, and surprisingly, they were actually coming to Uganda in Kampala. Okay, they were already in Uganda, but they were coming to Kampala. And so you could see the increasing number of people who are actually being trafficked to Uganda as well. Not only those who are being trafficked out of Uganda, but while out of Uganda. Now speaking to journalists, Agnes Igoye, who is the Deputy National Coordinator Prevention of Trafficking in Persons and Training Manager at the Directorate of Citizenship and Immigration Control, says they are following up a case where Eritreans have been trafficked into Uganda at the CPS in Jinja. So you could definitely see these ones were trafficked from Eritrea down to Kenya, from Kenya now to Uganda. So all this trail, if you could see the follow-up, these are some of the things that are actually coming up. This smuggling also includes smuggling of drugs that these people can actually come with, smuggling of other items that also include let's say, materials like guns, something that can actually pose threat to the Ugandans. All right, now let's move on with the next story in regards to the business. Now, according to Brigadier Flavia Biekwaso of the UPDF, she says illegal fishing must come to an end. Where does this come from? Now, recently, government gave an ultimatum of up to November this year to individuals involved in fishing in the 3 major lakes of Uganda to stop illegal fishing and smuggling of immature fish. Now, while addressing the media, Brigadier Flavia Biekwaso, the UPDF spokesperson, challenged Ugandans to desist from politicking fishing activities, where she called on the media to engage in the sensitization of the masses on the dangers of illegal fishing. She made the remarks at a time when Helen Adoa, the Minister of Fisheries, had recent revealed that there is a sharp decline of the fish stock, especially now perch and tilapia, as well as silverfish in the major lakes in Uganda. Adoa said that government has put up guidelines to stop illegal fishing, saying that failure to comply, the Minister in charge of Fisheries will have no option but to close the lake for 3 months, starting in December 2021. More of this story.
I don't want to say shouting, but disapproving of what we are doing. But today, we are going back to the scenario that we were prior to 2017. The factories today are only working, they can only operate 2 days in a week because the fish is not enough to sustain these factories.
The government has given up to November this year to individuals engaged in fishing in the 3 major lakes of Uganda to stop illegal fishing and smuggling of immature fish. Failure to comply, the minister in charge of fisheries threatened to have no option but to close the lake for 3 months starting December 2021. Addressing the media, Brigadier Flavia Biekwaso, the UPDF spokesperson, also added her initiative Uganda, where she called on Ugandans not to politicize the fishing sector, as well as urging the media to involve in sensitizing the masses on the dangers of illegal fishing.
He's saying if people are not serious about handling and avoiding illegal fishing, come December, these lakes are going to be, Lake Victoria is going to be closed. So my, like I said, it's not me who should talk about this, because I don't talk for the minister, but because we are there, because we are stakeholders, because we know what it means for all of us aware of the kind of revenue that we get from fishing. So if all the factories are going to close down, you know how that is going to mean to the country as a whole. So I'm just requesting us, the media, let's take this word to the media to make sure that we really sensitize.
In order to stop these illegal activities, the ministry, among others, directed that all small boats below 28 feet should leave the lake immediately, and if found, the owners will be imprisoned, and that all fish leaving the landing site must be accompanied by a fish movement permit indicating the landing origin and destination.
When it happened where we're doing good work, it was politicized. It became political. But let's take away politics from fishing. Let's use you, because I mean, no one is going to actually, it's you who usually talk a lot in the media and mislead, but this time join the minister and join the forces to make sure that people
abide by the fishing regulation.
The government tabled the Fisheries and Agriculture Bill 2021, in which it proposed a deterrent punishment for people convicted of committing offences related to illegal fishing and mismanagement of water bodies. The bill, which was tabled by then Government Chief Whip Ruth Nankabera on behalf of the Minister of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, seeks to repeal the Fish Act that regulate the fish industry. In the bill that was sent to the Committee on Agriculture, the government is concerned with the use of explosives, poison, undersized nets, and other illegal fishing gears to catch fish, among others. Pedson Mumbere, Smart 24.
All right, now speaking of illegal fishing in the country, to all of you who are using poison, explosive materials to make sure that you actually carry out with this fishing. You see, in school, we used to learn about bad fishing methods. And I remember some of the answers that I used to actually put on paper included using of bad nets, you know the language, using bad nets, using poison, use of poison, use of explosives, let's say. And here, if you look at the situation of some parts of illegal fishing, which include use of undersized nets, use of illegal fishing gears to catch fish. Remember, the idea is when people start getting money, they forget about the conservation of the environment. I think it is because now the hunger for money becomes more, the appetite is higher than what we expect, because most probably it's because, you see, as life goes by, I think the challenges we're facing is because every other person wakes up in the morning and they're like, no, you see, I feel this is supposed to be done, and I feel if we do this and this, this is what is going to be done at the end of the day. And remember, the biggest challenge that we have in life has always been how to cope up with seasons, because sometimes the fishermen, I think the only challenge is they don't believe that if today I managed to actually fetch 100 tilapia, tomorrow it may not be the case. I may get 50. So someone would want to multiply all day, every day. Someone would just want to add on to what they've actually got the previous day. So when someone gets 100, they're like, no, I will have to increase more on what I get, because it is actually going to give me more money. So I think those are some of the cases that's why it is actually happening. Now, if you look at the situation, the government tabled the Fisheries and Aquaculture Bill in 2020, in which it has proposed deterrent punishments for people convicted of committing offences related to illegal fishing and mismanagement of water bodies. Now, the bill, which was tabled by then Government Chief Whip Ruth Nankabera on behalf of the Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries, seeks to repeal the Fish Act Cap 197 in order to regulate the fish industry. Now, in the bill that was sent to the Committee on Agriculture, the government is more concerned with the use of explosives, poison, undersized nets and other illegal fishing gears to catch fish, as well as pollution of the water bodies, because once we pollute the water bodies, you've actually seen, according to the color of Lake Victoria, Moso, and some of the other local lakes, let's say Lake Choga, you could see most of us are not happy with it. But remember, it is us. This time around, we love politicizing all the situations where we blame the government on some issues one way or the other. But remember, it is us who are polluting these lakes as well now, which include illegal movement of fish and fish products, unlicensed boats that actually damage the situation of the on water, and compromise fisheries officers that are always on there. So that is what the bill is actually there to regulate. And then the other idea coming in from the UPDF spokesperson, that is Brigadier Flavia Biekwaso, she actually says that for one to actually operate, the UPDF is actually looking up to an idea where people are supposed to actually now get permits. In that, when you're carrying out fishing, or after you're done getting this fish out of the water, you're supposed to have a permit that actually shows that your fish is ready for the market, or you've actually got it from you've actually used the rightful boat let's say the equipment you've used to fish, to actually get this fish is the one that is actually accepted by the law. And the permit should actually show different addresses. For instance, I've got this fish from this lake. My landing site is, let's say, Kasenyi, and my destination is Malaba Port. Let's say I'm actually taking this to Masaka, or I'm taking this to Nakasero or Nakawa markets. So this is where the permits are. And this has actually been put on board because it is what the fishermen have actually called for. Not what the government wanted, but the way to regulate safe fishing on the different lakes in Uganda. This is what the regulations are aligned on board. And of course, in order to stop these activities, the ministry has, among others, directed that all small boats below 28 feet should leave the lake immediately, and if found, the owners will be imprisoned. Leaving the landing site must be accompanied by a fish movement permit indicating the landing origin, quantity, and the destination. For instance, the quantity of fish that you have, where it is actually going. And also, all the small boats below 28 feet are supposed to leave the lake immediately. So if at all you have boats that are below 28 feet, it's high time you got them off the shores. All right, now away from the local scene in terms of the business stories, let's head to the international scene, and we start off from China, where China's economy grows 4.9% in third quarter as the momentum slows. Now, the China's economic growth in the third quarter slumped to its lowest pace in a year as a property slowdown and energy shortages highlighted rising pressure on policy makers. More of this story.
Data released on Monday showed gross domestic product grew by 4.9% year-on-year between July and September. According to data released by the National Bureau of Statistics on Monday, compared with 7.9% in the 3-month ending in June, on a quarter-on-quarter basis, growth was just 0.2%. The figures add to the pressure building on President Xi Jinping. He enters his final year of his second term and pursues an ambitious common prosperity strategy, an effort to tackle excessively high incomes and encourage wealth redistribution. The Chinese leader's priorities include a crackdown on leverage in the struggling property sector that could mark a shift away from the country's debt-fueled economic model. Policymakers are also grappling with an energy crisis that has led to power rationing across the country, pushed factory gate inflation to its highest level since 1995, and forced the government to increase coal production despite pledges last year to reduce carbon emissions. China has also had to deal with coronavirus outbreaks that have led to the imposition of travel restrictions. Last month, Grant, China's second-largest developer by sales, a series of bond payments, leading to a collapse in investor demand for bonds issued by other property groups. Property investment has risen 8.8% in 2021, while fixed asset investment was up 7.3%, but new building construction starts are down 4.5% area this year. Despite China's broader economic slowdown, exports grew 28% last month, year-on-year in dollar terms, in a sign of resilience for the country's trade sector, despite the energy crisis and other supply chain challenges. The CSI 300 index of Shanghai and Shenzhen stocks was down as much 1.8% after the data were released.
If you look at the situation, the figures add to the pressure building on President Xi Jinping as he enters his final year of his second term and pursues an ambitious common prosperity strategy and effort to tackle excessively high incomes and encourage wealth redistribution. Now let's look at this as well. Policymakers are also grappling with energy crisis that has led to power rationing across the country, that is in China, and that has pushed factory gate inflation to its highest level since 1995. And this has forced the government to increase coal production despite pledges last year to reduce carbon emissions in the same country. If you look at China, has also had to deal with coronavirus outbreaks, which have led to the imposition of travel restrictions. We all know where coronavirus pandemic started from, Wuhan in China. So it was the country that was first hit hard by the pandemic. Now, last month, if you've been following up with the business stories in regards from the international scene, last month Evergrande, China's second largest developer by sales, missed a series of bond payments, leading to collapse in investor demand for bonds issued by other property groups. Now, property investment has risen by 8.8% in 2021, while fixed asset investment was up 7.3%. But newly building construction starts are down by 4.5% by this year. If you look at the area it covers, it is down by 4.5% by area this particular year. All right, okay, let's move on now. Let's head to the UK. the United Kingdom. Now, the United Kingdom manufacturers hit back at claims that firms are too reliant on foreign labor. Now, in a marked change of tone, Make UK urges government to work with sector instead of viewing it as the enemy within. More of the details. The trade body for British manufacturers has hit back at ministers' accusations that firms have relied for too long on cheap foreign labour, urging them to work in partnership with business instead of viewing it as the enemy within. Make UK is calling on the government to recognise the challenges they are facing, including supply chain disruption and shortages of staff such as HGV drivers, rather than blaming them at a time when they are also facing soaring costs, including for energy and raw materials. It is urging them to improve cooperation with industry to ensure companies can recover from Brexit and the pandemic and enable firms to invest and grow over the next decade. In an intervention ahead of the Chancellor's budget this month and in a marked change in tone for the organisation, Make UK said the manufacturing sector felt government was not working with them in a spirit of partnership. The organisation has urged the government to move on from Brexit, said Stephen Fifson, its chief executive. Currently, there is a feeling within industry that the government is still fighting the last war, sees business as the enemy within. He said the manufacturing sector is forecast to grow by 7% this year and just over 4% in 2022, but the trade body is warning that it will not bounce back to pre-pandemic levels if the government increases the tax burden on producers. The manufacturing sector in the United Kingdom is forecast. If you look at the forecast, it's actually estimated to grow by 7% this year and just by over 4% in 2022. But the trade body is warning that it will not bounce back to pre-pandemic levels if the government increases the tax burden on the producers. And the organization, if you look at the organization of MEC, which is a body that gathers the manufacturers in the UK, has urged the government to move on from Brexit. That is according to Stephen Fison, who is the chief executive. Now, currently, there is a feeling within the industry that the government is still fighting the last war and sees business as the enemy within. Okay, and lastly, from our international scene, let's head to our neighbors in Rwanda, as Rwanda is set to host a continental conference on microfinance starting October 19th. Now, the event is commonly known as Serviceable Available Market, or SAM in abbreviation, is the largest inclusive finance gathering in Africa. Now, around 600 international finance professionals will, starting October 19th, gather in starting from October 19th, which was Tuesday, did gather in, which is Wednesday, will start to gather in Kigali for a 5-day Africa microfinance starting from Tuesday 19th October till next week. Now, according to the agenda, the event ceremony will be held under the theme "One is not born resilient, one becomes it." Now, this is actually fostering inclusive finance to better overcomes crises. Now, the conference organizers believe provides a platform to discuss the shared insights on strengthening the resilience of financial service operators and beneficiaries to shocks such as COVID-19 pandemic. Now, look at the situation. Now, the agenda notes that the key highlights include SAM conference and investor fair, which will, at the end of the day, among others, offer link microfinance institutions, investors and business partners. Also, to be given priority are discussions around inclusive Africa finance, lessons learned and strategies for resilience as well. Now, the pathways to resilience has always been a favorable environment, a digital transformation and climate change are the key topics to talk about as well. All right, now that brings us to the end of our news hour. Coming up shortly, our sports business. This is SMB.